from floating in the sail, you know. Last subject in this matter is why do we fly with floating dive sticks? If they're so good and if they're there, why don't we use them? Most people think it's performance, but in reality, most people are worried about not having enough handling, you know. And of course, handling also is performance, you know. In that way, you know, the argument with the performance is right, but it's not all about sheer glide, you know. I personally always done my dive sticks low because I want to handle the glider, and in rough air, not being able to steer it is a worry, you know. And I said it a number of times in the civil meeting. I think personally, if you look at all the accidents, most accidents still happen on landing, and I'd be more worried about having a mid-air collision in a world championship than having a tumble. And the reason is, when we're all ambitious and when we're 120 or 140, I don't know how many pilots, you know, you create so much traffic there over the takeoff, you really want to have handling, you know. And there's a few people that have mid-air collisions, and yeah, even very good pilots, you know. It's just, there comes the moment when you avoid the first guy and the second guy, and then you have just given away all your options. And if you can't handle it, if you come like this, you know, then you hit the next person, you know. So, but because tumbling is our, you know, this is all the fear a hang glider pilot has, is you tumble and then you free fall and whatever, you know. Everybody looks at the tumbles because they are spectacular, you know. But think back of Neo, which was probably the civil category 1 event with the most accidents, you know. We also had a fatality there. It was not from tumbling, it was from not finding a good landing field. And by the end of the meet, we had so many broken pieces, we could write, we survived Neo with all the broken pieces. You know, it's like about 35 broken uprights, you know. So, but apparently nobody's too worried about our landing accidents, you know. It's the tumbling that everybody focuses on. So that's pretty much how I see it. If you had a more specific question?
What about the tail? What about the tail? The tail.
Back tail. Good thing. If you look at the hang glider, you know that the length of that keel is basically measured so the tip stands free, you know. That means we don't do a meter longer to allow for a longer tail because it's just too much weight there, and we think this is the perfect size. So when you put the tail here, you're not really further back than you are on the tip. And on a hang glider, they have been tried, and it has shown if you have a rigid enough dive stick construction, you're just as good as with the tail. This is a different thing on a rigid, because the rigids have a very flat sweep angle, and so and they also put the longer keel, so they increase their damping and their pitch a lot by putting that tail, you know. While a hang glider doesn't do enough to justify it. They were there on the earlier topless gliders when they were a bit more flexible on the tips, and they were working. I tried it with I can say, you know, like with a VG system where you can basically adjust it, and the result is when you don't feel it, when it doesn't hurt glide performance, it doesn't do anything. And as soon as you put it high enough so you can really feel on the whip stall that it stops, you know, you're pitching over more, you feel it really hard on the glide. So it's the same thing like a dive stick. You will eventually, if you have it, you will put it down so you're competitive, you know. Right now it's just not the fashion, you know. A couple of guys still use them, but I think the reason why they're gone is that the dive sticks are now stronger, and they will stay with rigids, but not with flex ones.
Gerolf, could you say a quick word on temperature effect?
Yeah, that's a good thing as well. You know, when we're talking about these tolerances and how much, you know, be the margin of safety or not, you need to also see that flexible hang gliders, you know, with the canvas foil, you know, they change in temperature. You know, you would see that the frame, if you have an aluminium frame, will expand in heat and shrink in cold. What people do not see so much is that the mylar and also the dacron, but the mylar more grows in not in heat so much as in humidity. You know, it gets wider in humidity, and if it's very dry, it shrinks. And what that does is, normally in hot conditions, you also have rather dry. That means the frame goes wide and the sail shrinks. Usually, it bends up the tips. You know, the tip will come up. Also on the dive sticks, you see a slight change. And this can be so much that you will basically fly in the Australian desert and come back into the English winter, and you will think what was great in Forbes is really scary now in England, you know? And you don't understand, because Australia has the strong thermals, you have almost nothing in the winter. Or in the summer. But the reason is you're too low now on the dive sticks. And it's not a shame to go up a full turn on all the dive sticks. Sometimes you have to do this much. You come from 35, 40 degrees into 0 or less. This is how much you gotta work on your dive sticks. So if you get the glider, it's not a God-given that it stays like that from day one to the end. You know, you gotta, if you feel something isn't right or it felt different somewhere else, it felt more solid then and it's not so good now, just go up on the dive sticks. There is variation and you've got to buffer it in that way. You know?
When you talk about safety, you talk about the Sprogs, but the twist, you can get the correct Sprogs level on a low twist. It's dangerous or not?
Well, you gotta make those that twist somehow. You know, Arrows has 2 dive sticks and not a tip that you can hold. The plastic gliders have an extra dive sticks, if you want to say, which is just not so strong. But you are leaning on 3 legs, and the Arrows is on 2 legs, and those 3 or 2 legs have to hold that washout up. You know, if it's not there, if it's too flexible, if, for instance, you had very good dive sticks, but then you use really soft buttons, that's not doing you good either, because then the load comes on, you're producing a down flap here, and you go over just as nice. You know, even the dive sticks are holding this high. That bit also needs to be stiff, and so any kind of elasticity in your system will usually hurt. The best glider would be a glider that doesn't need high dive sticks, because it is super rigid at the point, at the lowest point. You know, that was not always the understanding when we built gliders. I remember even Thomas Suchanek got it very wrong, and they had mounted a dive stick from the crossbar, which was a glass tip. You know, and the reason why he used the glass tip was because they were standing high in the sail, and just to allow some performance, you know, the sail wanted to push them down. So this was a very soft dive stick system, you know. But that was the beginning, and we've learned now it's better to have the dive sticks low but stiff and not already in the sail but soft.